Some nights change a person forever. Not because something happened, but because they finally realize nobody truly understood their pain. And after that realization, something inside them becomes colder, quieter, more distant. You still smile sometimes. You still talk, but there is a part of you that no longer expects music, comfort from anyone. Because disappointment repeated too many times becomes emotional numbness, snorts. People think strength looks loud. No, real strength is dragging yourself through darkness while your mind is collapsing and nobody notices. It is waking up with pressure in your chest and still handling responsibilities, still moving, still surviving. Isn't that funny? The strongest souls usually suffer in complete silence, and the world, music, rewards performances, not honesty, not pain, performances. So people learn to hide themselves. They hide sadness behind humor, hide trauma behind discipline, hide loneliness behind ambition. But eventually the human heart reaches a limit, a terrifying limit, where attachment dies, where emotions become tired, where a person stops chasing people completely. And honestly, that version is dangerous, not violent, not cruel, just impossible to manipulate anymore. Because suffering teaches awareness, it teaches distance, it teaches self-respect. And once someone learns how peaceful solitude can become, fake love no longer impresses them. So, if life has been heavy lately, do not let the darkness convince you that your story is over. Sometimes the breaking point is exactly where the transformation music begins. There comes a moment when a person no longer asks the world to understand them. They simply sit alone with their thoughts and learn how to survive them. Snorts, because after enough disappointment, silence starts feeling safer than conversation, safer than promises, safer than attachment. You stop chasing closure. You stop needing explanations. You stop knocking on doors that only opened when people needed something from you. And strangely, that loneliness begins to teach you things. It teaches you who truly cared, who only enjoyed your kindness, who disappeared the moment you became difficult to carry. There are battles people never see. The quiet war inside someone's chest at 3 a.m, the exhaustion hidden behind a normal face, the pressure of trying to stay gentle in a world, music that rewards cold hearts. Some people are one more disappointment away from emotionally disappearing forever. Not dying, just becoming unreachable. And honestly, you cannot blame them. A human being can only bleed internally for so long before they become numb to everything. But listen carefully. Numbness is not peace. Isolation is not healing. Healing begins the moment you stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. The moment you finally admit that your soul deserves peace too. Not endless sacrifice, not endless tolerance, peace. And maybe life became heavy because you were carrying people, memories, and expectations that were never yours to hold forever. So, breathe slowly tonight. You survived every painful version of yourself until now. That means something. Even tired hearts can learn how to feel light again. Maybe that is what maturity truly is. Not becoming emotionless, not becoming cold, but learning when to stop pouring your soul into places that only drain it. Some people spend years trying to be enough for everyone. Enough for family, enough for love, enough for people who constantly change music, the rules of acceptance. And one day, they wake up exhausted from carrying expectations that were never ending. That kind of exhaustion is dangerous because it does not attack the body. First, it attacks hope. It makes simple things feel heavy. Smiles feel forced. Conversations feel distant. Even happiness starts feeling unfamiliar. But there is something beautiful about reaching emotional rock bottom. You finally see clearly. You finally understand who brings peace into your life and who only brings noise. Pain removes illusions. That is why suffering changes people so deeply. Not because it makes them evil, but because it teaches them reality. The reality that not everybody clapping for you loves you. Not everybody staying beside you respects you. And not everybody losing you deserves another chance. There, snorts, are souls walking around this world carrying silent heartbreak nobody notices. Strong people, quiet people, people who laugh normally during the day, then stare at ceilings for hours at night, thinking about everything they never say aloud. And honestly, those are usually the people with the purest hearts, because despite everything life did to them, they still try to remain gentle, still try to love. Still try to believe tomorrow can feel different. Do not be ashamed for becoming more careful. A wounded mind learns caution naturally. That is not weakness. That is survival. And if your heart feels tired lately, rest not forever, just long enough to hear yourself again beneath all the noise. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is continue living softly after life tried so hard to harden them. You know, some people become addicted to carrying pain, not because they enjoy suffering, but because pain becomes familiar. Snorts and human beings are strange creatures. Sometimes we stay connected to what hurts us simply because it feels known. Even sadness can become a home after enough years. That is why healing feels uncomfortable at first. Peace feels unfamiliar. Silence feels suspicious. Love feels temporary. Because a wounded heart keeps waiting for the moment everything collapses again. And honestly, many people walking around smiling right now are secretly music, preparing themselves for disappointment every single day. They do not trust happiness fully anymore, not after everything they survived. There are nights where the mind becomes unbearably loud. Nights where memories replay themselves like punishment. Every regret, every humiliation, every moment you stayed silent when your soul was screaming. And the terrifying part? Most people around you never notice any of it. They only see the composed version, the calm version, the functioning version. Nobody sees the internal war required just to keep going. Nobody hears the conversations you have with yourself at night, trying to survive your own thoughts. Sometimes a person is not asking for attention, not asking for rescue. They just want one moment, one single moment where they do not feel emotionally alone. But life has a brutal way of teaching independence. Eventually, you learn to hold your own pain quietly, to wipe your own tears, to calm your own mind, to save yourself. And once a person learns how to survive alone, they stop fearing abandonment the same way, because they already met the worst loneliness possible, the loneliness of suffering beside people who never understood them. Listen carefully. Do not let bitterness consume your heart completely. Pain should sharpen wisdom, not destroy humanity inside you. Yes, become more careful. Yes, protect your energy. Yes, walk away from disrespect faster. But do not lose your ability to feel deeply. The world already has enough cold souls pretending numbness is strength. Real strength is remaining kind without becoming weak. Remaining soft without becoming naive. Remaining hopeful after disappointment tried to poison your spirit. Snorts. And maybe music, just maybe, the reason you survived every dark season until now is because there is still a version of you waiting ahead. A calmer version, a wiser version, a version no longer begging the world for validation. A version finally at peace with itself. Peace. Real peace is something most people never truly experience. because their minds never stop running. Their hearts never stop worrying. Their souls never stop carrying unfinished pain. Snorts. And after a while, a person becomes so used to emotional chaos that calmness almost feels uncomfortable. Isn't snorts that strange? Some people pray for silence, then panic the moment life finally becomes quiet. Because silence forces confrontation with memories, with regrets, with truths people spend years trying to outrun. There are truths hidden inside every exhausted person. Truths they never say aloud. Like how tired they are of pretending to be strong. How badly they want to disappear for a while. How much damage one betrayal can truly cause when it comes from someone trusted deeply. People underestimate emotional pain because they cannot see it bleeding. But invisible wounds are often the deepest ones. A broken bone heals faster than certain memories. A physical scar fades faster than humiliation. And loneliness, real loneliness, can slowly change the chemistry of a human soul. That is why some people become quieter with age. Not wiser, not calmer, just more aware of human nature. They learn that loyalty is rare, that honesty is expensive, that many relationships survive only because somebody keeps tolerating disrespect silently. And one day, the tolerant person gets tired. They stop arguing, stop chasing, stop explaining, not because they stopped caring, but because caring alone became exhausting. There is a heartbreak that comes from losing people, but there is another heartbreak, far more dangerous, that comes from losing yourself while trying to keep people. That kind of pain changes everything. It changes how you love, how you trust, how quickly your mind expects abandonment. And maybe that is why emotionally wounded people become so attached to solitude. Solitude does not betray them. Solitude does not manipulate them. Solitude asks for nothing. Just silence. Just breathing. Just distance from noise. But even then, the human heart still wants connection, still wants sincerity, still wants one safe place where it can finally stop pretending. So if your soul has been feeling heavy lately, do not punish yourself for becoming slower. Healing is not loud, it is not dramatic. Sometimes healing is simply waking up one morning and realizing the pain no longer controls every thought. And that small moment, that quiet little moment, can feel like surviving a war nobody knew you were fighting. Some wars leave no blood behind, no broken walls, no sirens, no funerals, but they still destroy people from the inside slowly. The war of constantly feeling unwanted. The war of overthinking every small change in someone's voice. The war of pretending you are emotionally fine because you are tired of explaining pain nobody fully understands. And after enough years, a person can become incredibly skilled at hiding suffering. They learn how to smile while emotionally drowning, how to comfort others while secretly collapsing, how to sit in crowded rooms yet feel completely disconnected from everyone inside them. That kind of loneliness is dangerous. Not because it makes someone violent, but because it slowly convinces them they must carry everything alone. And eventually, they stop asking for help. Not out of pride, out of exhaustion, because disappointment repeated too many times teaches silence, teaches emotional caution, teaches distance. Some people did not become cold naturally. Life trained them to expect betrayal before comfort, abandonment before reassurance, disrespect before understanding. And the terrifying part, most of them still have good hearts, still care too deeply, still forgive more than they should. That is why they suffer so much internally. A pure heart inside a harsh world becomes tired quickly, especially when nobody asks how the strong person is doing. Nobody checks on the one always helping others survive. Nobody notices the exhaustion hidden behind calm eyes. Sometimes the strongest people are only one quiet night away from completely breaking down. But listen carefully. Breaking emotionally does not always mean destruction. Sometimes it is release. Sometimes it is the soul refusing to carry what has been poisoning it for years. Pain has a strange way of forcing honesty. Eventually, you admit what hurts, who hurts, what no longer deserves access to your energy. And that awareness changes a person deeply. You stop chasing approval, stop forcing connection, stop shrinking yourself just to remain lovable in the eyes of people who never valued you correctly. You begin understanding something peaceful. Not everybody is meant to stay forever. Some people enter your life only to teach lessons. Some teach trust. Some teach boundaries. And some teach you the importance of protecting your inner peace before it disappears completely. There is nothing weak about becoming more selective with your energy. A tired soul deserves rest. A wounded mind deserves gentleness. And a loyal heart deserves reciprocity. Never feel guilty for walking away from environments that slowly destroy your spirit. Not every battle deserves your emotional sacrifice. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your kindness, because one day you realize your life becomes lighter the moment you stop carrying people who are comfortable watching you suffer. And honestly, that realization can feel heartbreaking but freeing at the same time. Like finally opening a window after surviving years inside a suffocating room. You know what hurts the most? Not being hated, not being insulted. It is realizing how easily people can forget everything you did for them once you stop being useful. That realization changes a person deeply, because suddenly you start questioning every connection you ever trusted. Was it love or convenience? Was it loyalty or temporary comfort? And the mind keeps replaying moments over and over, trying to find answers that no longer matter. Some people carry entire conversations inside their heads for years. Things they wish they said, things they wish, music they never tolerated, things they should have walked away from sooner. That is the cruel thing about emotional damage. The body leaves painful places faster than the heart does. A person can physically move on while mentally remaining trapped in the same wound for years. And the snorts world rarely notices. Because broken people become experts at looking normal. They master smiling politely. They master saying, "I'm fine." They master disappearing emotionally without making noise. But deep inside they are tired. Tired of carrying invisible weight. Tired of overthinking every interaction. Tired of wondering whether anybody truly understands them beyond the version they perform daily. There are nights when exhaustion is not physical at all. It is spiritual, mental, emotional, a heaviness sitting inside the chest that sleep alone cannot fix. And sometimes people do not need advice during those moments. They just need honesty. They need someone to say, yes, life can become unbearably heavy sometimes. Because pretending pain does not exist never heals it. Silence can hide suffering, but it cannot remove it. That is why healing begins with truth. The truth that you were hurt, the truth that certain memories still affect you, the truth that some people changed you permanently. And honestly, there is nothing shameful about that. Even strong souls get wounded. Even disciplined minds become overwhelmed. Even calm people break quietly when pressure lasts too long. But listen carefully now. Pain changes people in two directions. Some become cruel, others become wiser. Choose wisdom, choose awareness, choose distance from chaos, but never become the kind of darkness that once hurt you. Because the world already creates enough damaged hearts. What it lacks is emotionally intelligent people who survive suffering without losing their humanity completely. There is power in remaining calm after betrayal, power in remaining respectful after disrespect, power in walking away silently instead of begging to be valued. That silence scares people more than anger sometimes. Because anger gives emotion. Silence gives certainty. And once someone becomes certain they deserve peace, their entire energy changes. They stop forcing conversations, stop forcing relationships, stop forcing themselves into places where they are barely tolerated. That is not arrogance. That is self-respect, finally waking up after years of neglect. Maybe that is why solitude transforms certain people so deeply. It gives them space to hear themselves again, to rebuild themselves without constant noise from the world, to remember who they were before disappointment made them doubt their worth, and slowly, very slowly, their soul becomes lighter. Not because life became easier, but because they stopped carrying everything alone for everyone else. So if your heart feels distant lately, if your mind feels exhausted, if your spirit feels older than your age, rest without guilt. You have survived emotional storms people never even noticed. And despite everything, you are still here, still breathing, still trying, still refusing to let darkness completely consume the good inside you. And maybe that quiet resistance inside your soul is the strongest thing about you. Sometimes people mistake emotional control for lack of feeling. But the truth is often the opposite. The quietest people usually feel everything too deeply. That is why they withdraw, not because they hate people, but because constant disappointment becomes exhausting after a while. Imagine carrying conversations in your head all day, imagining outcomes, preparing for rejection before it even happens, expecting distance from people you love because life trained you to expect loss everywhere. That kind of thinking slowly drains the soul. And eventually a person reaches a terrifying stage of emotional fatigue. Not sadness, not anger, fatigue, where reacting itself becomes tiring, where explaining your pain feels pointless, where even being understood no longer feels possible. So they become quieter, softer, more isolated, and the world misunderstands them completely. Some call them cold, some call them distant, some call them difficult to love, but nobody asks how much pain taught them to become that way. Nobody asks how many nights they spent fixing themselves alone after being emotionally abandoned. Nobody asks how many times they forgave people who never truly deserved another chance. Because human beings often notice your reaction more than the suffering that created it. And honestly, that realization alone can make someone emotionally detached from almost everything. You stop expecting fairness, you stop expecting closure, you stop expecting people to understand the damage they caused. Not because the pain disappeared, but because exhaustion finally became stronger than attachment. There is a version of sadness that becomes strangely calm after enough time passes. No more dramatic breakdowns, no more desperate messages, no more chasing, just quiet acceptance. And that quiet acceptance can look peaceful from the outside, but inside there are still memories fighting to survive. Still wounds reacting silently to certain songs, certain places, certain nights. Funny how the human heart remembers things the mind desperately tries to forget. A smell, a sentence, a voice, and suddenly years of emotion return for a few music, painful seconds. That is why healing is never perfectly linear. Some days you feel free. Other days, one memory pulls your chest apart unexpectedly. But do not confuse temporary pain with failure. Healing does not mean becoming emotionless. It means the pain no longer controls music, your identity. It means you slowly stop measuring your worth through other people's treatment. You stop begging for consistency from inconsistent souls. You stop shrinking yourself just to remain accepted. And honestly, that transformation changes everything. Because once a person learns how to emotionally survive alone, they become very difficult to manipulate through fear of abandonment. That is when peace starts becoming addictive. Not loneliness, peace. The absence of emotional chaos. The absence of constant anxiety. The absence of explaining yourself repeatedly to people determined to misunderstand you anyway. There is something deeply powerful about becoming calm after surviving internal storms nobody saw. Not loud confidence, not arrogance, just quiet stability, a grounded soul. A mind no longer begging the world for permission to exist peacefully. And maybe life isolated you for a reason. Maybe the distance was necessary. Necessary to remove distractions. Necessary to rebuild boundaries. Necessary to teach your heart that being alone is far less dangerous than being surrounded by people who slowly destroy your spirit. So, take your time healing. Take your time rebuilding yourself quietly. The strongest transformations usually happen far away from attention, far away from noise, far away from people who only love the version of you that never said no. You begin to notice something strange as you heal. The things that once begged for your attention start looking small. Arguments become small. Validation becomes small. Drama becomes small. Snorts. Because suffering changes your priorities in ways comfort never could. After surviving heavy seasons emotionally, peace becomes more attractive than excitement. Silence becomes more attractive than crowds. Sincerity becomes more attractive than charm. And honestly, that shift confuses people, especially those who benefited from your old weakness. Some people only liked you when you constantly explained yourself, when you constantly tolerated disrespect, when you constantly abandoned your own needs to keep them comfortable. But healing changes that. You start protecting your energy differently. You stop answering every insult. Stop reacting to every provocation. Stop trying to convince people to see your value. Because deep maturity teaches one painful truth. People understand your absence faster than your words. And once you truly understand that, your behavior changes forever. You stop forcing emotional connections. You stop chasing emotionally unavailable people. You stop pouring loyalty into hands that only hold you temporarily. There is no peace in constantly proving your worth. No peace in begging for consistency. No peace in pretending certain behavior does not hurt you. A soul can become exhausted from swallowing pain silently for too long. That exhaustion reaches the eyes eventually, reaches the voice, reaches music, the way someone sits alone at night thinking about life. And some nights the loneliness feels unbearably loud. Not because nobody exists around you, but because emotional connection feels rare. Real connection, safe connection. The kind music where you do not have to perform strength every second. Funny thing is, many of the strongest people secretly dream about resting. Not quitting, just resting. Resting their minds, resting their hearts, resting from always carrying emotional weight without support. People talk a lot about ambition, discipline, success, but very few talk about emotional survival. The ability to continue being functional while your inner world feels heavy. The ability to stay respectful after betrayal. The ability to remain soft after life repeatedly tried to harden you. That is strength too. Real strength. Not loud dominance, not fake music toughness, quiet endurance. And maybe your pain taught you things comfort never would have taught: how to recognize manipulation faster, how to value sincerity, how to appreciate silence, how to walk away before losing yourself completely. There are people in this world who will never understand your transformation because they only knew the version of you that tolerated everything, the version desperate to keep everyone, the version terrified of disappointing people. But suffering changes people, not always into monsters, sometimes into observers, into calmer souls, into people who finally realize protecting their peace is not selfish. And once that realization settles deeply into the heart, life starts feeling different. Not perfect, not painless, but lighter. Because you stop carrying responsibility for everyone's emotions. You stop blaming yourself for other people's inability to love correctly. You stop trying to rescue people committed to misunderstanding you. That freedom, that emotional freedom, can feel almost unreal after years of overthinking everything. So, snorts, if you feel distant from the world lately, maybe your soul is not broken. Maybe it is recovering. Recovering from overstimulation, recovering from emotional chaos, recovering from years of giving too much of yourself away. And recovery is quiet sometimes, very quiet, like a tired heart slowly learning that it deserves gentleness too. At some point, you stop missing specific people. You start missing versions of yourself that existed before the pain. snorts, the version that trusted easily, the version that laughed without overthinking everything afterward, the version that did not analyze every silence like a warning sign. Pain changes the nervous system quietly. People think heartbreak is emotional only. No. It reaches the body too. The sleep becomes different. The breathing becomes heavier. The mind becomes restless even during peaceful moments. And after enough disappointment, the soul begins preparing for loss automatically, even while smiling, even while loving, even while hoping. That is why emotionally wounded people sometimes pull away suddenly, not because they stopped caring, but because caring started terrifying them, because attachment now feels connected to suffering in their mind. Their snorts are people who crave love deeply, while simultaneously fearing it, wanting closeness, while expecting betrayal, wanting honesty, while preparing emotionally for lies. And honestly, that internal contradiction can exhaust a human being more than physical labor ever could, especially when they fight those battles silently. No screaming, no dramatic breakdowns, just quiet overthinking, quiet sadness, quiet emotional exhaustion hidden behind normal conversations. Some souls become tired in ways sleep cannot repair, tired of constantly adapting, tired of constantly forgiving, tired of constantly being emotionally strong for everybody else. And eventually, they stop asking for understanding completely, not because they do not need it, but because disappointment taught them how rare true understanding really is. There is a loneliness that comes from isolation, music, but there is another kind, far heavier. That comes from feeling emotionally unseen around people. That loneliness changes a person slowly. It makes them quieter at gatherings, more distant in conversations, more attached to silence than noise. Sometimes they are not antisocial. They are just tired of superficial connection. Tired of pretending shallow conversations fill deep emotional emptiness. Tired of performing happiness while carrying invisible pressure inside their chest. And maybe that is why certain people become deeply attached to late nights. Because nighttime feels honest. No performances, no expectations, just thoughts, just breathing, just truth. At night, people finally meet themselves without distraction. And sometimes that meeting is painful because hidden emotions rise to the surface when the noise disappears. Regret, fear, memories, questions nobody can answer. Questions like, why did that pain change me so much? Why do I still think about things I should have forgotten? Why does my heart still react to people who no longer deserve space in my mind? The human heart is strange. It can remember pain longer than pleasure. Remember rejection longer than affection. Remember one betrayal louder than 100 acts of kindness. That is why protecting your inner world matters. What you repeatedly tolerate shapes your spirit slowly. What you repeatedly accept becomes your emotional environment. And if you constantly surround yourself with chaos, your nervous system eventually forgets what peace feels like. So, learn to leave places that constantly drain you. Learn to respect your emotional limits before your body forces you to. Learn to disappear quietly from spaces where your soul feels heavy. Sighs. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every misunderstanding deserves explanation. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your heart. Sometimes maturity is simply realizing you cannot heal in environments that continuously reopen your wounds. And maybe your soul has been asking for distance for a very long time, but your heart kept ignoring the warning signs because it was afraid to let go. But peace often begins exactly there. At the moment you finally choose yourself without guilt. Without guilt. That is the difficult part for kind people. They feel responsible for everyone. Everyone's comfort, everyone's emotions, everyone's peace, even the people who damage them. That is music. Why they stay too long sometimes. Too long in painful conversations. Too long in one-sided relationships. Too long in places where their spirit slowly disappears. Because deep down, they hope patience will eventually transform pain into love. But life does not always work that way. Sometimes patience only teaches people that you will tolerate anything. And once someone realizes you always stay, they stop fearing the consequences of hurting you. That truth hurts, especially for souls who loved sincerely, who gave sincerity without manipulation, who stayed loyal even while fighting silent emotional battles nobody noticed. Snorts, there is something heartbreaking about realizing you were emotionally caring people who would never carry you the same way. And the mind replays everything afterward. Every red flag ignored. Every excuse made for disrespect. Every moment intuition whispered something feels wrong here. But attachment can make intelligent people betray themselves emotionally. That is why healing often begins with honesty. Not honesty about others. Honesty about yourself, about what you tolerated, about what you ignored, about how many times you abandoned your own peace trying to save connections already falling apart. And that realization can break a heart quietly. Some people never recover because they keep romanticizing what destroyed them. They replay beautiful memories while ignoring the emotional damage attached to them. They miss moments while forgetting how painful the overall experience truly became. But growth changes perception slowly. You begin understanding that missing someone does not always mean they were good for your soul. Missing familiarity is not the same as missing peace. And honestly, a calm life starts becoming more valuable than intense emotions after enough suffering. No games, no confusion, no emotional instability, just sincerity, just mutual respect, music, just emotional safety. Snorts, because a tired heart eventually stops craving excitement. It starts craving rest, real rest, the kind where your nervous system no longer feels under attack constantly. That kind of peace feels almost unreal after emotional chaos. And maybe the strongest decision a person can make is refusing to continue cycles that slowly destroy them internally. Even if walking away hurts. Even if loneliness follows temporarily. Even if memories remain for a while. Painful endings still create space for healthier beginnings. Do not fear becoming more selective with your energy. Your soul is affected by everything you repeatedly expose it to. The conversations, the environments, the people, the emotional tension. So protect your inner peace seriously, not selfishly, seriously. Because once the mind becomes emotionally exhausted, everything in life starts feeling heavier than it truly is. And maybe that is why your heart has been asking for silence lately. Not because you hate the world, but because your soul is trying to breathe again.